And for more on this story, joining us is Professor Swaran Singh from School of International Studies, JNU. Good afternoon and welcome, sir. How do you interpret this political logjam over the short-term spending plan in the US?
Thank you, Shubhendu. I think it does come a little bit like a surprise in terms of defiance of Republican representatives against their own president. Though there was so much excitement about both Senate and House potentially becoming Republican controlled, and presidency, of course, also being with President Donald Trump of the Republican Party. Let me quickly say that in United States, the government funds various programs, including the entire budget, which also involves raising of the budget. And it is the legislature, it is the US Congress that determines the limit as to how much the debt can be raised by the executive branch of the government. Now, already there is about 133% of American US GDP, which is the limit that was set in last June 2023. And that limit was suspended to be effective till 1st January of 2025. And that's where the concern is. Now, since the presidency is being taken over by President Donald Trump, he was, of course, suggesting that again, ceiling could be lifted so that the government can continue to raise debt and continue to fund various programs. Let me also quickly mention that this is not for the first time. There are 5 to 6 major episodes in history, recent history, in fact, where the US Congress had shown this kind of a tussle, but invariably in the end accepting and helping the government to continue to raise.
Professor Singh, I actually want to ask you about that. Why does the most powerful economy in the world so frequently face the risk of government shutdowns?
I think it's more to do, Shivandhu, with the division of powers in terms of legislature versus executive and judiciary, where legislature does want to audit and oversee the kind of spending that has to be allowed. Otherwise, there are even have been occasions when the suspension of government funding went into 2 to 3 weeks, and then, of course, debt ceiling was raised. Second point important to understand that sometimes the country that is able to raise debt way beyond its own total economic size is also a reflection of global confidence in that economy. So Japan, for example, has much more. Japan, I think, has about 235% of their GDP as their debt, and the United States has now reached about 133%. That, in that sense, also reflects the credibility of a country's economy, where the debtors, the countries that are willing to sort of give that debt are willing to give that debt to, or institutions that are willing to give that debt to that nation are willing to give that nation. So it's not a matter of economic crisis in that sense. It's much more in terms of the let's say tussle sometime between the parties controlling the legislature versus the party controlling presidency. But as I said, the surprise was that even some of the Republicans, I'm told 30 Republican representatives, have also voted against raising of that ceiling, and that seems to be something intriguing.
Right. On that point, Professor Singh, we understand US government is in a phase of transition. What does this possible shutdown mean for the outgoing President Joe Biden and the incoming President-elect Donald Trump?
Looking at the track record of such tussles, I assume that it's possible that in next 24 hours some solution could be possible. And assuming that if that solution is not possible now, but maybe several weeks down the line, as we have seen in some of the cases before, that would impact the mood of inauguration of President Donald Trump, who will be taking over White House on 20th of January. And since this ceiling was suspended until 1st of January 2025, so Americans would begin that new year with, that question being raised on their salaries, on various programs, many programs on national security, social security, healthcare, and so on, are likely to be impacted. In that sense, it's going to be a bit of a psychological thing, which means that the mood of inauguration may be impacted. And of course, I have not seen any case when it created major crisis other than 2 to 3 weeks in worst case scenario of government shutdown, as they usually say about it, where funding is no longer available to be committed. But it's not something that day-to-day work will come to a halt. It's not like that. So I think it's primarily either the House of Representatives will vote on Friday night and send it to Senate for approval, or it's possible that it might drag 2 to 3 weeks, and in that sense impact the New Year mood in United States at large.
Right, and many are pointing at the Democrats, especially if the role of Elon Musk in this shutdown drama. They say that he appears to have almost disproportionate influence over President-elect Donald Trump.
That indeed, Shubhendu, is a debate in media across many sectors, including some of the interactions of international leaders, conversations on phone with other world leaders, where Elon Musk has emerged as a very, very significant influence in the presidency going to be of President Donald Trump. But that's a prerogative of American presidents. I mean, they are not bound by, in terms of making choices. You've seen he's already set up his team, which has people from all backgrounds. So in that sense, it's prerogative of the president who he wants to assign what responsibility, except that if it is the official position, like Elon Musk will be the co-chair of Department of Efficiency, which is a new department being created. Those may need to be kind of endorsed by the Senate. But if the Senate is going to be supported by Republicans, I don't think that is going to be a major issue. But this kind of example of 30 Republicans also voting against something that President Donald Trump wanted to see happening before his inauguration, or happening as soon as possible, is something that would raise some questions as to what happens, as to how enthusiastic are the congressmen as far as the various programs and propositions and nominees of President Donald Trump are.
And so finally, if we were to briefly look ahead at what the political and economic landscape of United States is likely to look like early next year, there'll be a new president. The Republicans are going to control the Senate and the House as well. How would US be transformed in that sense from what is happening now?
I think it's definitely seen a gradual redemption after pandemic period of crisis. So there has been a slightly gradual incremental betterment of growth rates, for example. But issues of inflation, unemployment are not completely out of kind of concern. In some sectors, in some areas, exports have also shown dipping in some of the quarters. So I think the bigger picture is that it's not in any dire situation, but the progression is having its own slow pace and hiccups. And in that sense, the way President Donald Trump wanted to come with a bang, in that sense, to do new things and make America great again kind of platform that he's come on, would see that he will have to really push it really hard to make sure that that kind of momentum can be potentially built. At this stage, I think it's going to be really slow pace growth, and some sectors will continue to be matter of concern.
Right. Professor Swaran Singh, appreciate you joining us on the News Hour and sharing your perspective.